Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Melanie Taylor, and I'm the Director of Education at Eat, Breathe, Thrive. I'm also a facilitator and the founder of the Life of Wellness Institute. And I'm really excited to be here with you today as part of a panel discussion. And I'm hosting today with a few of our facilitators as part of our year-long exploration of stories of recovery. So welcome, everybody. It's really good to see all of you. I know all of you, but you don't all know each other. And so I thought we could start with some introductions. So who'd like to go first? Go ahead, Hannah. Yeah.
I'm happy to. So I'm Hannah. I am an Eat, Breathe, Thrive facilitator, suffered with anorexia, and just over my journey of recovery found Eat, Breathe, Thrive, and it just spoke to me. It spoke to me in the sense of I'd found yoga and I found recovery, and merging the two was just incredible. So I'm here in the UK and yeah, happy to be here to discuss such an important thing that I think differs for all of us.
Wonderful to have you here, Hannah. Lara or Becca?
I'll go ahead. Hi, I'm Lara, and I've been with Eat, Breathe, Thrive as well. I'm a facilitator, and I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area right now. I also suffered with anorexia and found, I don't know, about 6 years ago, found Eat, Breathe, Thrive. And just like Hannah said, it was really beautiful. I was a yoga teacher, but also found, how the two married with one another, and just being able to bring a really wonderful experience to exploring, even deeper levels of recovery, and just so excited to be part of this team.
Thanks, Laura. And Becca?
So my name's Becca and I'm from Ireland, and I too have suffered with anorexia for quite a while, and I found Eat, Breathe, Thrive for me, first of all, because through the process of recovery and trying to use yoga through my recovery to help me, and then I just had more and more questions, and so then wanted to train as a facilitator, and yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Lovely to have you as well, Becca. I'll kind of add in because there's lots of similarities, and what I'm and I know this about each of you, but for me, very similar. I have binge eating disorder and recovering through that, and being able to utilize the skills of yoga and interoception and the things we know that it helps with to really start to listen to my body differently. And so very similarly, there's all these different parts of it, and Eat, Breathe, Thrive seem to pull it together in one succinct way, and allowing all of those pieces to really be known for their benefit in this environment. So it's the same sort of thing for each of us. So I love that. So I think I'm honored to be here with you today, and having this conversation around recovery and what it looks like, what it means. And this is quite an interesting conversation because recovery has so many unique meanings for each person. So we're going to talk a bit about eating disorders, mental health, mental illness, body image, having a body, being in relationship with our body and relationship with others. And so I thought what I'd start with is a question about just those terms: eating disorder, disordered eating, body insecurities, mental health challenges, recovery. They're so loaded with all these connotations for each person. So can we start with, how would you describe your own experience with those challenges, and how you understand what recovery or recovered means? How would you describe that for yourself?
Who wants to go? I really want to jump in because I find this fascinating, and I think the medical diagnosis of eating disorder is one thing, and I found it helpful when I was in the muddiness of what was going on, the experience of it, to have some sort of anchor, some sort of identifiable features. And I was really lucky that I then got the help in the mental health teams, psychiatrists, art therapists, community mental health nurse. I had a plethora, really luckily, of people to support me, and with their expertise in things, it definitely produced tools and skills that may not have been accessible. I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, that may not have been accessible right then and there, but they definitely had a part to play, I think, in my recovery. And And that idea of what recovery means to me, you know, recovery at 17 meant something completely different to what it means now. When I was in the throes of it, recovery would have meant eating that crumpet. You know, that would have been my whole world right then, in that moment, in that frame of time. That would have been recovery. And then it's stepping stones in which to build. And I believe in recovery, and recovery does mean different things for different people. And for me, I'm free of it. I'm free of it. And that's taken time. That's taken time.
I'm really hearing your description, like how it's adjusted and how it's changed, but today you'd identify as free of it. That's how you would describe recovery. I got that. Thank you. Lara or Becca?
I'll just go off of what Hannah said. I just think that what comes to mind is that idea of layers, right? Like there's so many layers of it. And just like she's saying, you know, when you're first out of recovery, and I think that there, you know, just along when you're saying with the diagnosis too, it feels like there's a bit more of a box of what you expect that to be. I know I had expectations for myself that it was that relapse meant failure, right? That there was like these very clear lines. And if you went across, then it was like, oh, well, you know, you have to hit the restart button, which feels devastating when you're working so hard towards recovery. And I think that when you're able to look at it, like you were saying, Mel, a relationship, you know, when we look at any relationship that we have with any other being, it's a work in progress. It ebbs and flows. You know, there's high points, there's low points, and there's forgiveness, and there's, you know, all kinds of nuances that come into it. And I think that in the beginning, there very much is, or at least for me, was a rigidity around it, which I feel like made it harder to feel like I was making progress. And I think as we are progressing in our lives and getting older and understanding that so much of this is learning how to cope with life experiences and just getting better at that and using those tools more and more, so we don't have to think so hard about it. So, yeah.
Well, I really heard something gold there, in that early part of recovery feels very rigid, like it's we are or we aren't. And what I'm hearing is like a softening of that expectation of being able to be with the ebb and flow of recovery with some self-compassion and an understanding that it is not a linear, it's you don't do this and then this is how it goes, but it is a human experience with that ebb and flow. Yeah, thank you. Becca?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not that long in recovery, really, in the kind of, if you take into account like the time that I was ill, I think I always have to remind myself for that length of time, I can't just click my fingers and I'm just, you know, out of it. It's a process. And I think especially when I went through recovery, there was a lot of, you know, eating disorder recovery accounts on Instagram and all of that kind of stuff. And I think I almost fell into this idea that if I wanted it, it would happen. And it just wasn't that simple for me. I had to definitely remind myself that it took me that long to try and get out of it. It's going to take me, you know, a chunk of time to get to where I want to be. And that's okay, because I can still live my life and still do the things that I want to do, while still reminding myself I need to check in. I need to make sure that I'm doing these things regularly. I need to make sure that I'm still challenging myself all the time and still making sure that I'm keeping myself well. And that's just where I am right now, and that's okay. So yeah.
Yeah, it's such a recognition. I mean, I know my therapist was like, it took you 40 years to develop PTSD. You think you're going to finish it in a session or in a year? Like just that expectation we have. But what I'm hearing is this part for recovery for you is being really present to your recovery, and that it's something that is alive for you. And that's what keeps your recovery happening, is being really present to your recovery. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, you guys. I love this. So next thing I want to talk about is, last year, well, really in the last 2 years with the pandemic, we've seen a real shift in some of the clients that we're working with in our Yoga for Eating Disorder Recovery program. And often, we've got a few of our facilitators with us today. One of the things that we've seen a lot of is, I can't even imagine or even have hope of what recovery might be. And so if we go back to this, what recovery means to you, if you could go back and share wisdom with yourself or encourage yourself in some way within the challenges that you faced, what would you say?
I have a good example of this just because I was teaching this week, and it just really, it comes in the moment, right? Like I think we expect these long swaths of time of feeling void of any negative thoughts or feelings or urges or anything like that. And it's the success in those little moments. It's that, the student that says, I was there, I took a breath, and I made a different choice this week. This week on Wednesday, I decided to do something different. And it's like, it still gives me chills right now. And those are the successes. Those are the moments, and they build on one another. And there's all kind of messiness in between, and, insecurities and feeling unsure about where you're going or if it's going to last. And I think that's, a part of it too. There's a lot of feeling like I've got to, if you touch it for a little bit, that you're doing well. And there's so many people around you that you feel like you're going to disappoint if you mess up again. And, it's like, just stay in this moment, just stay, right here, right now, and celebrate those small moments and share it. I think that's one of the gems, is when people can come and be in community and share those little wins, which are actually really big wins. So.
I just love that, the tone of what you were saying, and how it's messy. Recovery is and can be quite messy, with ups and downs and those ebbs and flows we were talking about earlier. Just sharing with you, there are a couple of things that for me made a significant difference in my recovery. I was on the precipice of doing something really quite drastic, and it's still here. How this 15 years ago, longer, I was on the precipice of doing something really difficult, and I was walking towards a place where it was dangerous. And I was walking along this road, and a car stopped, and I was in the bracken, and they could see that I was obviously really distraught. Can we take you anywhere? They said. And I was like, no. I was here. This was my world. It wasn't any bigger than just the rawness of what I was experiencing, but it was overwhelming at the time. Anyway, this couple in this car then went around the roundabout, came back up the road, around another roundabout, back down, and stopped again. And I still didn't get in the car. And I pushed them away, and there was that moment when they went, and it hit me. It hit me that these strangers cared, that there was an element of sheer hope and joyfulness in the fact that these strangers stopped for me, that my life was worth something, that I needed to walk in a different direction. And no matter how much I didn't trust myself to do that, because I couldn't understand that by eating it would free me from this world. I trusted a family member. I trusted my mum. And I said, enough's enough. This is not working. This isn't working what I'm doing. Like, I've been here enough now. Like, I'm running out of energy. Okay, I will do what you say. And I did. I just kept on. It wasn't working what I was doing. Okay, I'm going to do something different. And I kept having that conversation with myself. And it was really quite strict and rigid. And that's what you were alluding to, I think, Lara, in that earlier conversation. But that's what it was for me. It was this moment of joy and hope in the trust I had for humanity, and then the trust that I didn't give myself, but went, okay, I'll do as you say, because there's a little part of me that thinks, actually, I think you've got my back, and I don't think I'm in the right mind to determine what I should be eating or not eating right now. It's big. This stuff is big, and it stays with you. And that's what's so amazing about these conversations and Eat, Breathe, Thrive, because when you're in it, you don't know that anyone else has ever experienced it. You don't know that there's another side.
Well, and I have to just say, Hannah, when you're talking about that aspect of giving yourself over to someone who knows better, right? Like, I think that we often think it's going to be this internal feeling of like, I want, there is that, I want, this isn't working. But when it comes to feeling like you need to know exactly the steps to take, it's being able to say, I need help and I'm ready, but then allowing others to come in to support you, to show you the way to find that, right? To find that recovery. Because I think often we feel like we're supposed to just innately know what we're supposed to do or what steps to take, and we should be able to figure it out on our own and by ourselves, and we don't want to bother other people. And it's in those moments that trust will come, right? That's what recovery is, I feel like, is building that trust. I feel like there's not that sense, there's a huge sense of distrust, right? Of like not being able to trust your brain, not being able to trust, the messages that are coming in and the urges that are coming in, because it's so defiantly different than what, everyone else is telling us to do or telling us what our worth is. We don't feel that. We don't see it. Just like you said, it's like you're here, you can't access any of this stuff out there, but there comes a time where it's this almost blind trust that, like you said, it's with people that have your back, that will lead you in the right direction. And just knowing that you have to hold on for a little while until you can get your feet under you and build that trust for yourself. But that isn't forthcoming. It doesn't come right away. It takes a lot of time. So
yeah, it does. And I think there's that sense of some people don't have that person, but they might have a part of them that they can tap into, that they can listen to. And if they haven't got the help, there might be the therapist, there might be a doctor, they might be, I don't know, a shopkeeper, just someone, a passing stranger in a car who you think, oh my God, life is bigger than this. And it comes back to something that we said at the beginning about diagnosis and how that can be really helpful. But there is so much, I don't know, so much stuff around about once you have this diagnosis, it's lifelong, it's there forever. Well, no, in my freedom of recovery and where I'm at, that is not going to happen again. There is no way. Do you know what I mean? That it can become that identity and what you connect to that makes sense. But that's not all there is. I think that's what I want to say. That's not all there is.
Becca, did you want to add anything?
I was just thinking there that like my recovery to me, I think was like really accidental in a way. Like when I was ill, I kind of decided that I had a choice, that either I would spend my life in hospital or I would kind of like in my head, it was like either hospital or be like kind of well enough to be out. There was no, like, I didn't feel like I had anything, like there was anything else possible. And I remember kind of getting to that point where I was like, I was well enough to get a job and I was well enough to do things, but actually really I wasn't very well at all. And I think how I discovered it, right, I'd like tricked myself. I was like, I'm fine. And then I got pneumonia and suddenly I was like completely consumed and every part of me was just like completely consumed by it all over again, and I couldn't function. And then COVID hit, and weirdly enough, I think the fact that I didn't have like the stresses that I was dealing with at the time, and I had a break and I had like a second to just breathe and take a step back and kind of think about things. COVID actually saved me, weirdly enough. And I was able to kind of say, there's all this stuff happening around me. I can't control any of it, but I can just try and like sort myself out and try and keep going myself and make decisions for me and how I want to live my life when it's over. Because I think I realized how much I'd lost, and especially when 2 years now we're in it was gone from COVID, I was like I don't want to lose any more time. I think people were able to relate to what I felt so much when we were all in that situation where we were like locked like away and not able to see people and all that kind of stuff, that people got it for the first time what I was saying, and I felt a bit safer in talking, and I felt a bit safer in explaining how I felt. And I realized I didn't want to disappear and not have a life anymore. Like I did want my life back, and that helped me having that time to kind of, I didn't feel like life was rushing away without me, because everyone had kind of stopped for a second and I was able to almost like catch up, if that makes sense.
It really does. There's a theme in everybody's sharing, and I mean, Hannah, as you're sharing yours, I was kind of feeling it in me, and I could see it in all of us, just this recognition that my story is it's a friend who had no idea what to do. I mean, we were 16, had no idea what to do, and said, in a place of, I don't think you're safe, and to that point of like something that's going to happen that I don't want to happen for you, and she's right, that's where I was. Just said, in that I have no idea what to do here, can you come to yoga with me? Which is just where she was going next, and it's changed the trajectory of my whole life to have then gone to a yoga class where someone did have some of the wisdom and experience and did build trust with me. So I had that safe person to, as Laura described as well, the person to lean on. But attached to what you just said, Becca, around this really just desire to live, desire to be here and to be okay, and how hard it is to hope for that. And inside of the diagnosis effect of like, here's your life sentence, is how we hear it, and often even how we talk about it in communities of mental health, that like my PTSD felt like, oh, that's just me now. And it's not, it's recovered, and I'm able to step away and not it's right here right now, just not having that. But that's not how it feels in the moment. And reasonably having someone who can say, I can see the future that you can't see, and I will stand next to you as we walk it. And whether that's therapists and family and combination, your doctors, like having that community that can see what you aren't able to see. And all we have to do is be here with ourselves with, I want to be here. And I will let you drive the car for a while and let me know where we're going and how we're getting there, and hold that piece. So what a gift we could have given ourselves, like that, back to the question, like, what would you have told yourself, is you're not alone. Community does help. And if we can find someone that you can trust to kind of stand beside you for a while, that's such an important part of this, and allowing ourselves to hope for that. Yeah.
I think just on, I know, just on the back of that, just, if I was to speak to myself, there was a moment where I wanted to live and things, you know, that's where the hope opened up. But if I could have accessed that earlier, when I wasn't ready and I didn't want those things, could I have still trusted somebody to carry me through, to do as they said, to eat what they asked, and and then my brain might have functioned, and then I might have been able to think that I wanted to live. Do you know what I mean? So I just wanted to make that distinction of there's different times, aren't there, for these different things to occur.
Yeah. Yeah. And Hannah, what you just said is so powerful, because how we're really feeling inside, like even just in the reaction in our mind and our body of being undernourished or not getting the correct nourishment. For me, it was like binge eating and over exercising. So still that same disruption to the nourishment of my body and my brain to function at its capacity. It is really hard to see those things. And so the opportunity of what you just said, of to know that that's there and that that's real, and that isolating in that is part of how our brain functions in an undernourished, and I don't mean food undernourished, but like community and support and all of it nourished, is we get into I'm alone and nobody will understand. And almost that shame of, not almost, the shame of what if people knew what was really happening inside of me. It's a huge barrier to being able to say, this is truly what's going on. This is the raw of it. And I need help because I have no idea what's next. To have that kind of trust with someone is hard. Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, it's the speaking of the rawness of it. And I think it goes back to right what you said at the beginning of not wanting to be a burden. That idea of that sense of not wanting to give too much away, like the darkness and the ugliness of what we're feeling, like who could take that? I can't take it. But actually the opening up of that, and like actually people can take it. Like that's real, that's what's going on, not brushing over. And what Becca was saying about that, I really got sucked into this idea of thinking my way out, and seeing all those positive thoughts, and they have a part to play potentially, but like thinking that's the only thing here, maybe not. Yeah
I think this really leads into this next question too. Some of the misconceptions. I mean, we're all from different places in the world. I'm in Canada. I think I said that earlier on. And so what are some of the misconceptions that you had about what eating disorders were, or about recovery? And what has your experience now revealed to you that might surprise others, either that are in that journey somewhere, or even people that aren't, and how, what you've learned from other people looking in on something like a mental health disorder and eating disorder, where they don't understand because they haven't experienced it.
I'm unmuted already, so I guess I'll go. I think it's tricky because I don't want to romanticize it in any way, shape, or form, because it's not. I mean, it's a hard journey, but I have to say that I think that the depth of my growth and the ability for me to be present in the world that I am, the way that I am, and the quality that I am, and the relationships that I'm able to build are a result from doing that hard work, you know? And I think that I know for me, it felt like very much it was something I wanted to get rid of, right? I wanted to be done with it. I didn't want to be known for it. It was embarrassing, you know, like going back home and seeing people, you know, that I grew up with. It felt like it was just this, you know, the stigma, this cloud, this, like, I mean, all the challenging, awful, hard things that happened during my recovery. You know, you don't make the best of choices. And it's just one of those that I wanted to shield away from it. And I have to say that, like, coming and being part of Eat, Breathe, Thrive, and allowing myself to show up and speak candidly about it, and being forced, like that uncomfortable in the beginning of class when you're introducing yourself and talking about your eating disorder openly. For me, that was like the first time really engaging in a public way. Before, it had always been, you know, my own thing that I dealt with, and not that I wouldn't share it with certain people, but it wasn't something that I talked about openly. And I think often we feel like it needs to be this hidden away part of us and that we move on. But I have to say that I feel like by embracing it and shining a light on it, and I was afraid of that too, that like, might it come back if I start questioning things, if I start poking around too much, you know, like if I start poking holes in what I think is like the solid thing. And there's always room for growth. And I think that's my other thing. It was like, I did find that actually I still am struggling with some anxiety and depression. Like what was fueling a lot of my behaviors, what still is here, and that misconception that it's all going to be gone, that everything's just going to be okay once you get this one piece. It was understanding that this is a process, and it's a lifelong process of discovery, and then that can actually be beautiful. And so I feel like it fuels this kind of inquiry and ability to look at yourself and ask hard questions, and do the work to get through it. And it's that's been that foundation, right? Because you're forced to do it. Like Becca was saying, we often think that we can just kind of do things as we're going along, but this kind of stops you in your tracks and it's like, actually, no, you can't. You know, you need to look at this. We need to actually take time to address the issues at hand. And I feel like, you know, it's not a discarding of the self. It's acknowledging and honoring your way of being, and then figuring out how to support yourself in that way versus trying to just fit a mold or move forward, move on. It's really embracing yourself for who you are, the good and the, you know, not so good sometimes. And I feel like that has been a real gift. So yeah.
I'm listening to Laura share and thinking so deeply of Becca in this moment. This culturally, there are ways of being around mental health, not just eating disorders, but mental health as a whole. I know my first mental health diagnosis was after 9/11. And a member of my like very, very close, without disclosing family said, when I said that, you know, I'd been diagnosed and I was given medication, said, "Oh, don't tell anybody. You don't want anybody to know that you're crazy." And I was like, and I think was said to try to protect me and was awful. Both of those are true. But knowing that my family comes from Ireland and that is part of our growing up, and knowing, you know, Becca right now is preparing to run a program, one of our Eat, We Thrive series programs in Ireland. And so Becca, I'd love to hear from that sort of as a side bit is to talk about culturally, like just the silence culture around mental health, the shame culture around mental health, and the impact of being able to say exactly what Laura said. Actually, I'm not afraid, and I don't have to be in the shame that you're putting. I need to be able to speak openly about what's happening with me and get help and be supported. I'd love to hear what is there for you, and certainly Hannah and Laura, feel free to jump in there as well.
So I was thinking about this a lot the other day, actually. There's a few things. I know a girl who went to the same school I went to, and who is about the same age. And I would say I was probably physically at my worst. And I remembered the second, like I went to the doctor thinking, like, basically I hadn't had my period in a long, long time. And I went to the doctor and I came out with this diagnosis. And I remember I turned to my mum and I was like, "You're not telling anyone. Like, you're not telling my brother, you're not telling my dad, you're not telling like school, like nobody is to know, like it's not happening." And I think it just fueled it. I think I felt so alone. And even though I didn't want people to know, because I was so ashamed and so embarrassed of what I was doing to myself as well, apart from a diagnosis, I just didn't want anyone to know. And like there was clearly something wrong, but I was very much like, we can keep this quiet, like nobody needs to know. And then I was talking to this other girl, and she was saying to me like she didn't want anyone to know either. And I thought, how is this still the same situation 10 years on? Like, how are we still sitting here? She goes to the same school that I went to, and still the school don't know what to do. The school don't know how to say something. When they found out that I had a diagnosis, my teachers were like, oh yeah, I knew for like so many months, or like a year or whatever it was, but didn't say anything. And it, like, they were embarrassed to bring the subject up. I was embarrassed that I like too embarrassed to go and say it to my guidance counselor or whatever else. So yeah, it's frustrating and it's annoying, and there are so many things still that people just like don't know about and don't understand. And I think one of the biggest things for me that like I wish I could change was this idea that it was almost like when I was physically really, really unwell, people got it and people like checked in and were like, are you okay? This, that, and the other. But for me, my head and my body don't match up. Like, my body can look well, it can look healthy, but it's a war zone in my brain. Like, they're not like, synced together. Just because my body looks fine does not mean my head's okay. And it's so hard to explain that to people. And it's still this idea here that like, that's the case. And as well, like, I think there's so many different things that we struggle with eating disorders and disordered eating. It's not just like food. There's so much more that goes with that. And I think, again, still here, it's like this idea that if you have an eating disorder, you're either anorexic or bulimic, and that's just it. Like, that you just need to fix that and then you'll be fine and like everything will be okay. And it's just not. And I remember like doctors here, like, they're not trained. Like, I remember being discharged from an A&E and then a consultant calling the next day and being like, you need to come back, you need to be admitted. Like, they're not trained to understand these things, which is so hard when you go looking for help and automatically you're like turned away because they don't understand it or they don't want to talk about it. Or you're written a little prescription and sent home and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, I don't understand. But I think there's so much that does need to be changed. But me talking about it, like, it was small steps. I didn't like go starting to speak about it like to, publicly straight away. It was a case of like talking to my best friend. I remember once saying to somebody that I really, really love and care about, I was like, I'm not talking to you about these things because I want you to fix me. Like, I'm trying to explain it. I'm trying to like you to understand what's going on in my head so that you don't think I'm crazy or you don't think like I'm, this weird, different person. Like, I'm still me. It's just, I come with this thing in my head that I'm fighting. And that's the only difference. And I wish people could understand that. I wish people could get it. But it's only going to happen if we talk about it. So, yeah.
Oh, Becca, so beautiful. There's a couple key things there I want to plot. I know Hannah wants to say something too. In our last session with this, the Chelsea lad, one of the women that were there said, we have this thing around in yoga, like there's no such thing as a yoga body. And there's no such thing as an eating disorder body. And so, right. And I wrote it down and I was like typing it in, like, we can't lose this because it's such a gold statement. For myself with binge eating disorder, I went through this in the early 90s. That wasn't even a diagnosis available in the DSM until 2013. And so there are limitations in diagnosis. I mean, we've talked about some of the benefits of diagnosis, but there are limitations. You know, the BMI is a broken tool. I cried last night watching Grey's Anatomy, one of my little things that I do. As Bailey goes on, I'm trying to find the video, and like just literally tells the absolute truth about the BMI model. It's such a powerful monologue. And we've got all these parts of it that are limiting people's access. And then you've got this place of shame, and that we feel shame to talk about it because of our culture around mental health. And while, you know, and there are places in Canada, like every year we have Bell Let's Talk Day and we talk about mental health, but it doesn't feel different from year to year. They've been doing it for years, and I don't feel a difference in my community or in my country. And I know that's what we've been chatting about here with Becca, that the silence culture, while we're talking about it in communities and we're talking about it out loud, isn't actually changing. And Brene Brown, that was the other big thing that came to me, is Brene Brown's like, shame can only live in the dark. And as long as these things are being hidden and they're not openly talked about, and as a place of something you're dealing with, not something of who you are, it will continue to be that way. And I'll hand it to Hannah, because I know she's like, has something.
Yes, hate BMI, hate that idea of just people putting someone in a box. Like what? Anyway, if you're struggling in your head or in your body, any which way, if it's taking up too much time, if it's impacting your life, if it's time for a change. What I was going to say is I'm maybe speaking to the people who didn't feel the shame or the disgust, but actually felt in their diagnosis or in their journey that they felt proud. And I know that this is a bit twisted, but I really want to speak to this, because there was a part of me that was proud in my success at having an eating disorder. You know, I was in competition with other people who had eating disorders, or images on screens. Somebody said, oh, she could be a model now. And I was ruined, body, mind, being. And this was something that to be proud of. But there were times in me that it did. So I'm just here speaking to those people who are having these feelings. You know, it's not always, we're always in recovery. We're not always, but it's a struggle. And the eating disorder for me, I associated as something separate from myself in the end, in order to be able to fight it. So that was something that really worked. Because when it was in me and it was embodying me and embellishing my thoughts and my mind, I wasn't able to get away from it. And it really did suck me into a very twisted and dark mentality. So this is where I'm talking about this idea that actually I was proud of where I was successful, and it was the only thing I could actually do. It was my identity. So there wasn't shame. Actually, it was part of me that basked in it. And that was the eating disorder part. So I think we are all individuals in this, and people that are experiencing it now as well. You know, your experience, the dark parts, the light parts, the shadows, everything that's in there and textured and visceral for you, it's all valid. Mm-hmm. There's not one way.
So important, Hannah. I think, you know, for me, being proud enough that I could over exercise enough so that nobody noticed, right? Like, just there was definitely a part of that. And interesting, last night as I went to try to find, I'm like, somebody's pulled this. Like, there's somebody that's like captured that video, and I definitely want to get. In searching it, what I found last night was the social media culture around. And I know it's there, but like seeing it last night was really profound, of this, you know, celebration around look at how I've been able to control and control BMI and lower BMI. And so it's a very important part that you've brought up, Hannah. Lara, did you want to add something? It's your mic off.
Yeah, I just think that aspect of really highlighting the mental health piece of things, because I think that so much energy and of course, I mean, and especially in the beginning, it's a life-saving measure that we have to start eating. But like, I think as ourselves too, recognizing it isn't just an absence or a presence of behaviors. It is this, like Becca said it so beautifully, of like, it's a war zone in there, and feeling like that they're like recognizing the mental aspect of it. And I just that out of control feeling, like it's not this, it doesn't feel like a decision, right? Like when you're in it, it doesn't feel like a decision. It feels like this is your operating system. This is it. This is what has to happen for me to get through my day. And yes, there can be this like, you know, I think, you know, with social media and all of that, where it's like this focus and comparison and all of that, there is elements of that, but I know like a lot for me, it was to shrink, it was to disappear. It wasn't, I mean, yes and no, like, yes, there was this aspect of wanting to be, you know, thinner and this and that, but there was this, I can't handle life and I just want to go away. And that was the feeling, not that I needed to get up to a certain size or gain a certain amount of weight, or, you know, it was that I had to feel like I wanted to exist in this world and that I could handle it. And I think that was part of that. And I just need to, you know, I think what Becca was saying about how that COVID was a gift of being able to step away. I think so often we don't want to press pause and we don't want to acknowledge the weight of what we're going through, because it feels like you just would you just eat something? Like, can't you just pop on a movie? Can't you just cheer up a little bit? Like, it feels like we just need to like get on and move on with it, because everybody's busy. It's a lot going on. We have our plates full. And it feels selfish to stop and say, I can't do this right now with all the noise. Like, I need to be able to press pause and get quiet and hear exactly what is so uncomfortable about life right now. You know, what is it in that is happening for me? And then being able to start to notice those little points that you can change and shift, so it isn't this complete overhaul that feels overwhelming. And I think that has been a gift both of COVID, and you see a lot of people making changes, right? Like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that really was not working for me, or it had this direct effect on my life, because now that I'm bringing it back in, it really shines the light. But also that aspect of the mental health being, because it's a universal experience right now, because like there's this willingness to have this conversation and to not feel alone. And I think that is the biggest piece in that, even though we all have had, you know, our stories are different and how exactly we move through this. But when it comes to being able to be in community and have conversations about that, and the relief that I see, well, that I've experienced for myself being in, where I can just talk openly about what, you know, is going on for me and not feeling like I need to shield people. But also the people in our groups that come in and that they can just candidly talk about, you know, this is what came up for me, and to know that they're not alone. Like, I just really hope that we can normalize and recognize that it's more than, we are more than our behaviors. There is this mental, you know, health aspect to it, and we really need to give it the attention that it deserves. You know, and to feel empowered to make those shifts that we need to for us, even though other people may be able to function fine in those environments. To stand up for yourself and be able to make those changes.
We could talk all day. Really. So I hear a few things that we sort of talk about this whole conversation. You know, the sense of just as you were just saying, Laura and Hannah, so beautifully, like, and back kind of starting us in this place of like the war zone that's going on, and how difficult that is. I think all of us in today, in this very moment, are very present to the destruction within that. And we've talked about community and the need for that, the ability to find that person, that group, that support team that can really help and guide us along the way. And so what I'd love to end with today is, you know, I think often, Laura, you said this so beautifully, I just want it over. I don't want to talk about it again. I don't want to think about it again. And that's, you know, like, enough. Like, I've had all this time of having this be my life. And what I find really interesting, and we've talked about this before, is how that's actually how we feel. And then somehow that's not how it ends up. Somehow these strengths and tools that we develop in going through this war actually become this golden thread of what we do later on. There's like a tie-in of the strengths that we've developed that we think are like bad skills because they came out of the mud. But in fact, it's like the lotus, right? Like what is created out of this mud and out of this war is unbelievably powerful when we allow ourselves to see this. So my question in that light is, how has your experience of recovery and recovering and you know, Hannah, in your description of like being free of it, how has this enhanced your life, your work, and the future that you're living into now?
Wow, I've just thinking along those lines, there's a friend who's going through recovery, and there was a point where, you know, she couldn't imagine life, and I've got a picture of her who were going out for pizza in this teepee, and it was lush, and it was just about the experience, the wholeness of her whole being there. And I remember taking the picture, and she wouldn't particularly like photos being taken, and you know what, I just sent it to her and I said, and life comes back. You know, that's what recovery gives. It gives us so much of the world right back. It gives us the ability to have the perception and the foresight and potentially the skills to help others. But for me, it's given me my family. And I always wanted a family. So even in that, like the deepest, darkest time, it was something that came through. Don't you want a family? Well, yeah. Well, how am I going to get that? For me, that was a little thread, a little tug that pulled through. But here I am. I feel like this is a good moment for me, but I feel like I could take on anything. And that sort of strength, that inner strength, has been given to me by so many different people, and also me, Mel, giving me this little nugget of, you know, it's the essence of you. It's not what I do. It's not what I have to say. It's not how I behave. Actually, it's just this little spark in each and every one of us. And that essence, for it to flourish, allow yourself to have that self-compassion to flourish, it's given me everything. And breathe, ladies. And breathe.
I'll go. Yeah, needed to breathe in. Just my first thought off of that, and just with that aspect of that essence, right? Like, I think that, you know, as much as we avoid, and like you were saying, Mel, we bring together all these tools to do our work and this and that, but then when we see that essence, that spark, that beauty in someone else, and to know that we figured it out and we were able to heal, and we were able to, and I don't want to say figure it out, because I feel like every day I'm still, I want to be like, it's not done, but if we can be that, even for a moment, that reflection, that mirror for someone else, for them to get a glimpse of all that we see, just even a glimpse that helps them to take that next step into that next day, into that next moment, I think it's huge, you know. And I think that us being able to speak candidly and to let the shame wash away, and to just own, you know, what our past is, and but also own the work that we've done. You know, I think that allowing yourself to acknowledge, you know, how much time and energy that it takes to move through all of this, and to contribute and to give back. And I think, yeah, I think in the work that we do in our community, we see it every day, those little lights that go on, those moments of either softening, or those moments of like the aha or the insight of like, I might be able to do this, or that exhale of being able to show up like messy and cry and be all snotty, and and the people still want to see you the next week. Like, it's fantastic to come and not be, to be enough and not be too much, and all of it. Like, it's just to own the, like, I feel like it's this like kaleidoscope of like experiences and feelings, and it's so hard to articulate right now, but it allows all of that beauty to come in. I mean, Hannah, you said it so beautifully, like life happens. Like, you finally allow yourself to engage in life, and it's beautiful. So, okay, I can't talk anymore.
Becca, did you want to add anything?
I was just actually thinking while the girls were talking there, I remember taking the Eat, Breathe, Thrive course myself. And I remember when I first spoke to Chelsea and she called me a survivor. And I remember like this switch in my brain. It was like, I am strong. I'm not broken. I'm not this shattered person. Like, I have this crazy amount of strength. Like, to me, I'm just like indestructible now. Like, I can do what I want to do and nothing can stop me. And it's not even for me just about helping people to be able to like move through their journey. It's about helping them see, like, in a way, going through all that horrific trauma and all the horribleness that comes along with an eating disorder. It becomes like your little superpower when you move past it. Like, it is your little thing that makes you thrive then, once you've moved past that and you're living and you're thriving again. It really does make you feel like you just have this strength that you can't even describe to someone else.
Oh, well said, Becca. Okay, we do have to come to an end, and I'm feeling myself like, don't do it. Don't end it. Just be here, which is the value of community. So I thank all of you for being here today with me and with each other, and sharing with our Eat, Breathe, Thrive community. And so there's, you know, the question that I think might be on anyone's mind watching this is, okay, how do I become part of this community? How do I, because what we really shared, and Laura, what you were saying there, what I really heard is, I get to be my authentic self, and to Hannah's point, and I get to live. And that is our superpower, like to pull what all three of you just said into a sentence. And so I know, and we've all shared, the impact of being part of this community has had on each of us in different parts of our journey. Being able to be witnessed and seen as a human being, for our strengths and for who we are, and not as a disorder, not as our mental health, not as our struggles, but as who we actually, the essence of who we are, and be honored for our experiences, not from a place of wrong and broken and needing to be solved or fixed, from a place of honoring that essence. And so if you are listening to this and you are like, I need that. I need that community. I need that place that I can be me and authentically just share what I'm going through. We want you to join us. And so there's 2 ways to do that. We've got our Yoga for Eating Disorder Recovery program, which currently Hannah and Laura and myself are leading. And there is our 7-week series, Eat, Breathe, Thrive 7-week series that Becca is about to lead. And they're all in online formats. And so I'll make sure that there's links going on when we share the videos on social media and YouTube and all those places, links to your upcoming programs. But I think let's end maybe on for each of you, what is the one thing you would want someone to know about the program that you're leading, the one that's coming up for you? What's the sentence that you would want them to hear? Good question, I guess.
I think you're not alone is the biggest. I mean, I think that community aspect is huge. You're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Lara.
Yeah, coming as you are. I think that's what I teach. You know, we teach coming as you are, however you feel, just showing up and to experience the experience that you will experience and what you take from it without any expectation again. That the potential, I think, is powerful.
Got it. Becca.
I think I don't even have like a sentence. I think it's just a word, and that like the word is worthy. Like it doesn't matter. Like the rest of it doesn't matter. Like you're worthy of like doing something for you, like doing something nice for you.
What a great way to end that. So I'd love people to know how to keep in touch with you guys. Obviously, you know, they can come to our website at eatbreathethrive.org, click on our events page. You're going to see Becca's program on there, as well as our Yoga for Eating Disorder Recovery programs. But if somebody wanted to follow you in the work that you're doing, each of you I know have your own work that you're doing. Can you share either your website or your social media tag or some way for them to follow you?
Yeah, I've got a yoga company, H Yoga. So I'll be looking at doing yoga classes and one-to-ones. Yeah, so head up hyoga.co.uk.
You want to spell that, just make sure the person listening knows.
H yoga.
Great. Great, perfect. What's next?
Yeah. My website it's key to Kaizen yoga.com, and it's KITOKAIZEN yoga.com. And right now I'm teaching classes, and mostly my work is with Eat, Breathe, Thrive right now. But also have fun discovery tools. I do Reiki and numerology and all kinds of fun stuff. So thanks.
Thanks, Lara and Becca.
So I don't have a website. I kind of teach here, there, everywhere. But on Instagram, I'm Beck's Yoga Bubble. So BECS Yoga Bubble.
Wonderful. We'll make sure that we link to all of those as well, so that our followers can check in on your classes and what you're up to. And thank you so much. It has been a real joy and a pleasure to be with all of you today, to have you, as facilitators, we're all over the world. And so being able to come together and share each other's stories and listen to each other, I think is just such one of my favorite things about being part of this community. So thank you so much for accepting my request.
Thanks, ladies.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.